All right, all right. Up next, we got Ann Tomlin doing, let's see here. She's going to be presenting solar flares on the inbox, incorporating interactive hotspots to your email code. So I'm going to go and queue up the session, and Ann's going to be here for the Q&A towards the end. So make sure you throw those questions in the Q&A tab, all right? Let's go and get this going.
Hi, I'm Ann Tomlin. I'm going to be talking about how to implement hotspots in email. I started coding emails in 2010 and began freelancing through my company Emails Y'all in 2017. My core belief is that everyone deserves a well-rendered email, so I'm a real advocate for accessibility, as you'll see later. I'll be talking about hotspots and how to create them using this solar system image. First, we'll talk about how to set up the background image, followed by the checkbox hack that makes hotspots function. Next, we'll learn about positioning the hotspots and their content, and finally, we'll wrap up with the fallback. To do hotspots well, you first need to consider your audience and their email clients. This hotspot functionality works only in Apple Mail, iOS Mail, and Outlook for Mac, which I'll call the big three. If those don't constitute a large share of your audience, hotspots may not be something you want to invest in. However, it can be a powerful interactive tool, and all the other email clients do have fallbacks. So first, we build the container for the interactive part of the email so that it displays only in the big three. Because the interactive section will only be seen on the big three, we can use divs for all interactive structures. The top level div hides and shows the interactive section. The second level div holds the background image on which the hotspots are placed. The first bit of code is an Outlook conditional that hides what's inside from Outlook. The first div is hidden with inline styles display none and overflow hidden. The next div holds the background image followed by the hero text. Here's the CSS for styling the outside divs. A media query targets only the email clients that use the WebKit rendering engine so that the interactive content will be shown only to the big three. The first div is hidden by inline styles, but is made visible by the fallback hide class. You can see that display block and overflow visible on this class directly negate the inline display none and overflow hidden styles when the email is viewed on the big three. We need to hide any additional space that would result in a container longer than our stated 1034 pixels, and that requires overflow hidden. That leaves the background image, which we can set via CSS rather than an inline style and a background attribute. I have the background size set to 100% auto because we want the container to always take up the available vertical space. So we have our container and our background image showing for the big three. Now we're going to co-opt the checkbox input to hide and show certain parts of the code when it's checked. You've almost certainly encountered an HTML checkbox, which is used as a Boolean value. So it's either on or off, yes or no, true or false. The pseudo class of checked is applied when the checkbox is clicked. This is what drives the checkbox hack. You can provide new CSS with the checked pseudo class. We'll use display block to show the checkbox content and display none to hide it. We start building the checkbox with an input tag. Label tags differentiate between the checkboxes, and an image that is automatically clickable, thank you to the label, serves as an intuitive hotspot. So here we have the background image with a checkbox on top. Instead of a square box or a text label, we're using an image. That yellow circle is the visible, clickable part of the checkbox. We started coding a hotspot with an input tag with the type checkbox. We hide the box part of the checkbox with display none and give it an ID of hotspot1. The next two divs are the hotspot container that holds the background image and the div that contains the label. The label div class has hiding styles on it to hide the height of the div. We're including overflow visible to prevent extra space around the label. The label has a for attribute with the value hotspot1, just like the input's ID. A label's for attribute must be the same as the ID attribute for the related element to bind them together. A label can also be bound to an element, such as our image, by placing the element inside the label tag. We're styling the label to have a width and height of 30 pixels, which are the dimensions of our image. We've also added display inline block to correctly position the label on the background image. You might be wondering about these span tags. The first span hides the image from screen readers by using ARIA hidden. The second establishes a hotspot text label of Mercury for those screen readers. We then make the screen reader only text invisible for all email clients with font size 0 and line height 0 styles on that span tag. So we've created a checkbox and used an image as its label. Now we need to position the hotspot over the correct part of the background image. Without positioning styles, the hotspot will appear in the upper left-hand corner of the container, but we want it on Mercury. A margin top of 145 pixels moves the hotspot image down, and a margin left of 285 pixels moves it towards the center of the background image, right over Mercury. Our hotspot is now positioned correctly on the background image in desktop, but what about mobile? This is the mobile media query for positioning the hotspot, targeting screen widths that are 375 pixels and under. This media query is still inside the WebKit rendering engine media query. The first style is the container div that holds the background image. As the background image scales down, it gets shorter, so we need to move the hotspot accordingly. We give the hotspot new margin values, this time in VWs, which stands for viewport width and works like a percentage. The value of 14 viewport widths will move the hotspot 14% down the entire screen height. The margin left works the same way. The hotspot is moved to 44% of the entire screen width. The use of viewport widths allows the hotspot to move up automatically with the scale of the background image. Our measurements are relative to screen width, so we can't specify only one set of margins and expect it to work for every screen size ranging from 480 to 320. So I created multiple media queries, one for each of the most common screen sizes, all within the WebKit only media query. For each media query, you need to change the margin values so that the hotspot sits in the same spot on the background image. You change the margins very slowly, one by one, until you have it in the right location for each and every hotspot. This is not fun. It's a total, a whole bunch of pixel work, but you'll get through it. Lastly, we change the values of the hero text so that it also scales in proportion to the background image. So now the hotspot's in the right location. Now we need to create the content for when it's clicked. This content becomes visible when you click the hotspot. Like the hotspot itself, the content box is displayed on the background image. It's a styled container with an image, a headline, a body text, and a close icon that, when clicked, hides the content. At the top portion of the hotspot content box is our old friend, the background image div. I've included that here along with the ellipsis to show that the hotspot content is located after the hotspot code, all contained within the new Hotspots Content 1 div. This div is styled with a background color, font size, and border, along with other styles to hide it until the hotspot is activated. Inside this new div is another label with hotspot1 as the value for the for attribute, just like the hotspot label. When clicked, this label hides the content div, returning it to the inactive state. If you think of the hotspot as an open button, we need a corresponding close button to hide the content box again. So we're using the pseudo class checked with the input ID hotspot1 here. Using these together allows us to provide new CSS only if the hotspot is checked, and of course return the original CSS when the checkbox is no longer active. The main new CSS we're providing when the checkbox is checked is display block with an important to show the content. There are also styles that create the look of the content container. Changes to width, height, and padding once the checkbox is checked. Lastly, we're using a new image for the closing label. It's positioned absolute within the content box so that it stays in the exact same place. Of course, we need to ensure that the close image takes up only the necessary amount of space, so we're surrounding it with a short little div. So now we'll look at the bottom of the hotspot content box. Right after the label, you'll find the content that will be displayed. We've got the image of Mercury, the headline, and the body copy. All of these are styled with inline styles. In this example, we've set an image size and font size that works with all screen widths, so we don't have any additional classes to change the CSS, but you could do that the way you normally would. So the hotspot content has been created. Now we need to position it on the container. We'll first look at desktop and then mobile. Like we saw earlier, the background image div specifies a height of 1034 pixels, meaning the entire background image portion of the email will be 1034 pixels tall. If you look at the last style, we're setting the content container's height to 500 pixels. For all that content to be visible at one time, the background image's height needs to be more than 500 pixels, which is why we're also setting the height of the background image to 1034 pixels when the checkbox is checked. You'll notice that just like the hotspot, we're positioning the content box on the background image with margins. We want the hotspot content box to show up in the middle of the screen, centered above Mercury. So we're using pixels on margin top. For positioning the content box on the horizontal axis, we're giving it a margin right value of 12 viewport widths so that it appears in the middle of the screen. As we discussed earlier, viewport widths allow the positioned element to move along with the background image as it scales. But because our measurements are relative to the width of the screen, they need to be adjusted as the screen size decreases. So let's look at that in the mobile media query. As always with mobile, we're using a media query to target the mobile screen widths. The background image should span the entire width of the screen and should be 650 pixels tall, since when width decreases, the height decreases. So how do I know that the best height for this background image is the screen size is 650? Fractions and algebra. The desktop's fraction of height over width is 1034 over 600. The mobile's fraction is x, meaning the height, over 375. Solve for x and you get 646.25, and then round up to 650 for good measure. Looking at that height of 717, you might be wondering why we have two different height values for the background image div. Look again. That 717 pixels of height is applied only when the hotspot has been clicked and the content div is visible. In the next style, we're telling the content div to be 75% of the width of the screen and 530 pixels tall. 530 pixels is awfully close to 650 pixels, and that doesn't even consider the space needed for the hero text at the top. To display everything at the same time correctly, we need to tell the background image container to grow a little bit vertically only when the checkbox is active. To position the content div when the screen size is 375 pixels or smaller, we're using 50 pixels of margin from the top instead of 80, and we've switched to a percentage of 13 for margin right. As the screen gets smaller, your margin right numbers will also decrease because there will be less space between the container div and the side of the screen. This too will be pretty tedious when you have to find the right margin values for every screen size. You'll need to increase the margin size by 1 percentage point at a time until the content is in the right place. And you have to do that for each and every hotspot. So I've shown you only one hotspot in these slides, but this build actually has 4. Whenever you saw a number attached to a class name, know that there are 3 more of those. Each hotspot has a container with a close button, a planet image, a planet headline, and a blurb I copied directly from Wikipedia. I manually positioned all the hotspots and all the content divs 1 pixel or percentage at a time. But when your subscribers see it, all that hard work is gonna pay off. You'll see your engagement skyrocket. This is the kind of email that non-email people love to rave about. But what about the subscribers that don't use the big 3? That's why we have a fallback. Thanks to the fallback hide class, the interactive part of the code is completely hidden. But that means that people who don't see the interactive content can only see the inner solar system text. So let's fix that and give those subscribers some content. This is the structure of our email. Inside the body, we have one container div placed on top of the other. The first container holds the interactive code, and beneath it is another container div that holds all the fallback content. We have to make sure that each email client is served the correct content container, and we'll do that with the fallback hide and fallback show classes. Fallback hide is the class on the interactive container and has the inline styles display none, MSO hide all, max height 0, and overflow hidden, all with importance. The interactive section is hidden by default and needs styles to make it visible. We only ever want WebKit email clients to see the interactive section, so we define the styles to make the interactive part visible inside a WebKit media query. Conversely, fallback show is the class on the fallback container and has the inline style display block. That means that the fallback container is visible by default. We want to hide the fallback section only for WebKit email clients. So we're setting the class fallback show to display none inside the WebKit media query. So let's talk about all these extras that have been added to the fallback classes. This is how you target certain email clients and serve specific styles to each of them. These are usually used for instances like giving Gmail a different value for padding than every other email client. But here, we're using them to control what each email client renders. The first one, message view body, is how you target the native Samsung Mail app. Samsung wraps your email in a div with the ID message view body, providing a nice way for us to be able to target it specifically. Samsung doesn't show our hotspots code correctly, so we want to hide the interactive container, meaning fallback hide, with display none, and show the fallback container, meaning fallback show. It's not absolutely necessary to serve fallback show, the display block, overflow visible, and so on, since the fallback container is visible by default, but it doesn't hurt. The second target is for Outlook.com. It prepends all your classes with X underscore, so we just have to use the new class names to target it. Outlook.com does use the WebKit rendering engine, but it doesn't fully support the pseudo class checked, so we need to hide it using the WebKit media query as well. The third is appending \0 to your class names to target the Outlook mobile app. We need to hide Outlook mobile because it too does not fully support the pseudo class checked. You might be wondering why I'm not targeting Gmail to hide it. I am, but in an indirect way. All the interactive styles are in a WebKit media query that's inside the body of the email. Gmail only supports styles in the head, so putting that style block inside the body automatically hides it from Gmail. Now that we've hidden everything correctly, let's take a look at the fallback HTML. All the fallback code is contained inside a div with the class fallback show, so we know it's being hidden only for email clients that use WebKit and visible for everyone else. Our fallback is made of the top background image with the headline followed by each content container. First is the background image with the headline. You can see that we have a traditional background image defined as both a background element and a background image style. We have to account for desktop Outlook in the fallback, so we're also defining the background image via VML. After the VML, there's a 100% width table with some padding on all sides and the headline inside. There wasn't room on the slide, so that table code is implied with the ellipsis. That's followed by the closing VML to complete the background image for desktop. This is the fallback content container for Mercury. There's some padding on the sides to make the container narrow in desktop, plus a class that changes the padding to 25 pixels in mobile. The main table with the content has a yellow border at the top of the table, a background color, and some inside padding. Within that is the same content as the interactive section, the image, headline, and text blurb. This is the entire email in both desktop and mobile. All the content blocks are stacked on top of each other. There's a bit of spacing between them done with padding. And that's it. So let's wrap up. We've learned that interactive hotspots work in the big three: Apple Mail, iOS Mail, and Outlook for Mac, and that every other email client gets a fallback. We know that hotspots are created with inputs and their labels, and that positioning hotspots and the content containers takes margins and a lot of patience. We learned how the checkbox hack works with the checked pseudo class, and how to use hacks to target each email client individually. Lastly, we learned how to provide a fallback for email clients that don't support the interactive elements. And with that, I'd like to thank you for attending. You can contact me any of these ways if you have any questions or just want to talk email.
All right, y'all, let's get Ann in here for some quick Q&A, shall we? Let's go in and get her on stage. All right, here she comes, y'all. Ann, how's it going? Good to see you.
Hey.
Thanks for joining me in space. And y'all, she was going back and forth with y'all in the chat, so I hope y'all got some good answers in there. But let's get into this Q&A, shall we?
Yeah.
All right. let's see. Let's take a look here. Okay, I'm gonna throw this one up here. All right, and so June wanted to know, should we consider adopting AMP email more extensively for the Gmail app? Do you believe that more companies like Apple might eventually develop their proprietary code for their email clients? What are we thinking?
So this is just my opinion. My opinion is that if AMP was going to be a thing, it would have already been a thing. So, I mean, it's been years and I've never been asked to code an AMP email. So I would love the chance to do so. But the fact that for years haven't gotten anything, I think it's not as going to be well supported as, you know, what we just saw with the interactive email with the checkbox hack.
Love it, love it. Yeah, last year we had a brief talk, I think, on AMP for email with Akshaya from Spellbound. Maybe we need to get that. Maybe we need to get her to come back, and maybe we all can do this together because it's been interesting, but it's just taken some time to adapt. So totally understandable. Okay, moving on here. This one comes in from Peter. Let's see here. Peter wanted to know, what is the primary difference or in value of using hotspots versus AMP? Client support, trackability, UX. What are we thinking?
So I actually do not know very much about AMP. I believe that the main thing would be that the AMP code expires after 30 days. So you're left with just a plain text email. So that's kind of a bummer after 30 days. If your subscriber goes back to it, they don't see the awesome whatever you just put in for AMP. But the checkbox hack does work in a decent amount of email clients. Like I said, it's really something that you have to think about with your particular audience in mind.
Love it, love it. And of course, yeah, we know Anne is primarily on the hotspot side. We're definitely not for the AMP side. And then moving on here, it looks like Julie wanted to know, how do we prevent Gmail clipping with this large amount of code? What do you think?
This actually is not that much code. It looks like a lot, but it is not. It is not anywhere near 102 kilobytes. And that's the 102 kilobytes is right where the clipping starts for Gmail. So I believe that this is about 70 or 80. So we're still really good on clipping.
Gotcha. Okay, and actually, I wanted to know this one because I haven't heard anything like this before, and this one comes in from Tom. Tom wanted to know, doesn't size equal 0 flag for spam? What do you think?
So I am not a spam person. I know absolutely zero about this. Sorry.
Hey, no worries. We can definitely feel that to our deliverability folks. And also, this one came in from an external channel, and we wanted to ask you from this external one. Are there ways to add interactivity to emails if you don't have much coding experience? And I'll even throw that on here so we can kind of see that one. Let me see here. Let me push that up for you.
Yes, there are definitely some resources out there. If you go to email resource.es, I believe, email resources, they have some links to interactivity tutorials. So you would still have to, thanks, Mark. You would still have to, and I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
But there are tutorials out there. You will have to touch the code, but there are also some, if you're an SFMC user, they have some interactive carousel as well. So there are there are places to use and learn how to do this.
Yeah, and everyone check out that link that Mark just dropped in. I think it's emailresource.es. Yeah. Thanks for the assist, Mark. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And okay, let's see here. This is a good one. This is another one that came from our external channels. This one came from Twitter, actually. Let me throw this one in here. Someone wanted to know, is there any evidence showing interactive emails boost conversions? Is it worth all the effort?
Well, it definitely depends on your audience. If you have an audience that is, that can see the interactivity, part of it, because people that are on Outlook and such will not see that. They'll get the fallback. But if you have if you have a large base on like Apple Mail ish, like this actually started as a client email. I just changed it a bit so that it would work for Email Camp. But yes, they did. My client did actually see a boost of about, I think she said 25%, something like that. So for them, it was worth it.
And there you go, folks. It's worth it. All right. And then we got one more here coming. Let's see. Let me grab this one. Are there any ways to suggest an email is interactive before a subscriber opens it? How could you communicate that in a subject line? Let me put that up here so we can all see that.
It's with subject lines, not sure. I am not a copywriter. However, one part that did not actually show up in the slides is that those hotspot images, they pulse. And they pulse at different times. So all four of them pulse at a different speed. And so it's very like eye-catching to say, like, here's something to click on. There's something moving here. I should click on that.
look at this. It's moving. Yes, for sure. Awesome. Well, y'all, that is all the time we got for Ann. Ann, is there anything you want to leave us with this last minute 30? Anything you want to add before we let you go?
I am releasing a email coding course in January. So look at emailsyall.com and let's keep the party going. There is the code.
Yes, there we go. Cool. Should just drop that for everyone, y'all. Perfect. Yep. Love it. That's in the right there. Perfect. Check out that parcel link. It should be awesome. Ann's always making cool stuff, and she's got some really cool stickers that I'm waiting to get my hands on. It says emails y'all. I love them. So hopefully I'll get to see you soon. I got to come down from space, so I got to make my way down back to Texas so I can get some of those. And it's always a joy to have you with us. I love hanging out with you. It's always good to hear your takeaways. So I seriously thank you so much. I appreciate you coming by and taking time out of your day to be here with us, especially at Email Camp Mission Control. So we want to thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Love it.
Awesome, man. Well, it's good to see you. Everyone, let's give a wave to Ann and tell her goodbye, and we'll see you soon. Ann, always good to see you. Cool. Take care, y'all. All right. Cool, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get ready for, let's see who we got up next. Let's see. Upcoming next. I got a quick little break, so I'm going to go ahead and meet y'all on the break. And we'll do that for just a few minutes, and then we'll move on. See you in the moment.